Hello, thank you all for joining us today. This webinar is about EASYPay, which is for J.D. Edwards credit card and ACH automation payments, brought to you by KRise Systems. I'm Katie Wackich, the Sales and Marketing Coordinator here, and joining me today is Doug Pulaski, our Director of Sales and Marketing, Joe DePietro, a sales manager, and then Suman Prasad, our CTO. Just to get started here, I want you all to know that on the right-hand side, you should have a questions box. So if at any point, just type out your question, and we'll try and answer it right then if we can. But if not, we'll definitely save some time at the end to do that. So let's get started, and I will turn it over to Doug.
Katie, thank you very much, and everybody in attendance, thank you for taking your valuable time and spending an hour to watch our webinar. The good news is it's not going to be a lot of PowerPoint slides. I'm going to go through the slides very quick so that I can get right to the meat and potatoes of showing you our solution and how it works inside of J.D. Edwards. We have an instance of J.D. Edwards E1 9.2. I think a good place to start is we support every version of J.D. Edwards E1 and every version of J.D. Edwards World. Needless to say, for the World customers out there, the integration's a little bit different. It's a 5250 approach versus E1, which is predominantly a business function approach. With that, I'm, like I said, quickly going to go through the slides. Chat any questions to Katie, and she'll interrupt. We want to make this as interactive as possible. First, a little bit about KRise. This is obviously a webinar. Just to let you know, we're in Aurora, Illinois, which is a far west suburb of Chicago. We've been around for 13 years, and we are 100% a software company. We don't resell J.D. Edwards, although we're J.D. Edwards experts, especially integration experts, and people like Suman have in a prior life fully installed J.D. Edwards. So myself, 20 years with J.D. Edwards. I was a J.D. Edwards employee from 1997 to 2002, and I've been in the eco space ever since. So a lot of us here at KRise have a rich history with J.D. Edwards, myself pre-Oracle, and obviously after. Now, we do a number of things from the software perspective. We're an e-commerce company, which relates to the EASYPay, because e-commerce many times involves payments with the credit card and invoices and the payments. We also provide many solutions that we call on the buy side of the enterprise, dealing with the AP and the purchase order side of J.D. Edwards, buyer supplier portals for PO management, PO transportation, invoice approval through a portal, voucher two-way, three-way, PO requisitioning, vendor onboarding. We also do ESS type functionality, and we do a lot of custom applications for many companies out there. And the reason, I'm going to switch that and then go back. The reason on the prior side for that is because we are not a software company that's tied to a programming language like Java or .NET or C#. We are a platform company. This is an enterprise application development and integration platform, and I emphasize the word enterprise. We've had companies like Windstream Communication come to us, and can you create an application for PO requisitioning to replace Ariba, and they're generating $2 to $3 million in POs a day with our solution, which would fall under the buy side. Today we're going to be focused on this, the credit cards and e-commerce, because it comes into play there. Initially, though, it's credit cards from a non-web perspective. That's where I'm going to start the demo inside of J.D. Edwards. And I did want to refer back to the other slide. We have many companies, large companies, and as everybody knows, especially myself, being a veteran of J.D. Edwards for 20 years, the SMB market is a huge marketplace inside of J.D. Edwards. But obviously, we've got the Fox and Mercury Marines, but our meat potatoes is the SMB market of JD Edwards. In fact, that's a good point to start this webinar. I've been affiliated with JD Edwards, and the credit card requirements for so many companies, it's not like the retail sector from the perspective of hundreds, or I should say thousands of credit cards a day. The use case scenario for many JDE companies they're predominantly AR terms with their customers, but credit card is evolving and growing slowly in some cases, faster in other cases, but they reach a point where they're dealing with credit card transactions, and a typical use case scenario is 40, 50, 60 a day, and manually going out to a virtual terminal or having finance or accounting, a handoff from the CSRs. It gets to the point where many times it approaches a full-time person, and then there's the part about managing it accurately inside of JD Edwards. So that's very typical use case scenario, although we are doing the larger accounts, but the use case scenario I just described is very, very typical. A little bit about the platform. It separates ourselves. We can do customizations. We can do personalizations. Because we're not a programming language company, this is our platform, by the way. It has 400 services, so if we need to integrate to CRM or an outside database or a service, or in the case of credit card, gateways. We take an agnostic gateways and processors. We take an agnostic approach. We've written APIs for over 10 gateways. The big ones out there, of course, are PayPal, PayFlow Pro, CyberSource. CyberSource has Authorize.net. But we don't care. Adyen and Avanev and Moneris, Bank of Montreal, and Chase Payment Tech, their Orbital Payment Gateway. So we take that agnostic approach. So that's specific where integration business services come into play, creating the REST or SOAP or iframe type integration connections. And then our logic is all done in a visual modeling. There's no programming. That's what you're seeing there. Workflow is represented there. That's the web part. There's a little bit more about workflow. So it's very, very powerful. This is a slide touching on e-commerce, and this is just the high level. You get very, very detailed, such as the payment side of e-commerce specific to JD Edwards. We're working with either the P4210 or the P42101 power forms, but then to manage the entire order-to-cash automation, after the capture settlement, you're going to be seeing this. We have to manage batch AR update. We've got to manage the AR accounts, and many times this gets very involved. For many of our customers, they have many company codes, business units, and it's very, very easy for us to do this, but this is just a high-level representation of some of the integration points with JD Edwards. And you know what, I'm going to show this and then refer back to this. The reconciliation, the way that we can handle that, and that's the cash receipt. So think about what I'm going to go through from 3 steps. I'm going to create a JDE credit card sales order. So that's the order crate, 52540. And like most JD Edwards, it's not retail where you're going to do the authorization and the settlement at the same time like you would at Barnes & Noble. You're just going to do the authorization at order crate. And then at the point where, say, you've got the freight lines all calculated, and that might be ship confirmation. It's up to you. We work off of status codes, hold codes. We can work off of a UBE. But at some point, and this is automated, then the settlement occurs, the capture settlement. And then after that, the batch AR updates. And we can do it a number of different ways. We can just process the batch AR update at the end of the day, but there's a delay between the funds when you understand how the credit card network works, so we can put a scheduled delay on it, or we can even, tie it to the actual deposit in the merchant bank, which is this down here. We've got our settings, and so we can get, the bottom line is we can get very, very GL, sales ledger centric in terms of how we're managing it inside of JD Edwards. This is topography of our architecture, and by the way, Katie did high level, introduce us. So I do have our Chief Technology Officer here. So Suma, looking at this particular page right here, I think if you can display or explain very, very high level the overall architecture of EasyPay.
Definitely. So on the very left-hand side, you are looking at the different applications that can interact with EasyPay. So you see on the very top, there's EasyCommerce third-party applications such as JD Edwards and JD Edwards for ERP. So again, the first main focus of the presentation today is the JD Edwards, how we are going to be integrated inside P4210 and Power Forms, and that's something that Doug will be showing. But on top of that, the very nature of the EasyPay, which is API driven, we are all driven with REST APIs, allows you to expose our APIs on an existing third-party applications or e-commerce application. If you have a site which is hosting Magento or any other homegrown e-commerce systems, you can still utilize our e-commerce, our EasyPay solution, and plug it into your e-commerce solution using our APIs. So you have that option. That's what we're trying to explain on the middle. And again, ultimately, the payment gateway is where we go and use the hosted payment gateway. So we are avoiding the PCI compliant issues here. We are basically hosting the forms, the PCI forms that Doug will be showing, the hosted forms, and not taking any credit card CHD, the credit card holder data, letting it touch anywhere into your JD Edwards enterprise system. So your JD Edwards is not in PCI scope.
Yeah, we're going to show you this, but what Suman's talking about, because we want to focus on both automation and the PCI security, but under this payment gateway, we no longer, at one point in time years ago, we did encryption. And, for a microsecond, the card was so-called in the clear, and because we're doing encryption, that put our application in what PCI calls PCI scope. So we're no longer doing that. We're doing everything with what's called payment gateway hosted payment pages. When PCI defines your liability as a merchant, they refer to two acronyms, CHD, cardholder data, which is the confidential information on the stripe or the chip of the card, and CDE, cardholder data environment. So everything, and then they get into cardholder data, CHD, processing, transmit, storage. So everything we're doing now is at the gateway. All the gateways, all the modern gateways have set themselves up so that the PCI scope falls on them. And this is important too. Our application with JD Edwards is 100%, this is our server here. So we are working with JD Edwards from a pure interoperability. You reference your interoperability manual, and it talks about, obviously, Z-file and EDI, but there's a section called the XML call object to call the master business functions. With World, we're using a 5250 emulator, but so because of that, our application is not on JD Edwards. One of our competitors does, in fact, have a solution written inside the One World toolset, and even if they're doing the exact same thing, I don't recommend that, because taking that approach, you are, in fact, putting JDE in scope. Even if when you get into, say, heaven forbid, a PCI audit, it's still in PCI scope. With our approach, and especially if you take it from a cloud perspective, and so this is like a cloud perspective, and we've implemented in a lot of cloud data centers, Rackspace, Microsoft, Azure, but we're mostly AWS. So, and we have AWS perfected. And I strongly recommend a cloud because when you get into the 12 steps of PCI, using the hosted payment page, this is your liability. If you've got a compliance officer watching this right now and they realize this, their liability as a merchant, you ask your customers for their confidential credit card, you're liable. So you got to make sure it's protected. We don't even do encryption anymore, like I said. But if you go with cloud, then you, especially AWS, they're obviously a tier 1, a PCI facility. Then you get into all of the other things like default passwords. You don't have to worry about that, and you know the various firewalls and things like that. And so with that, let's get right to the demo. So I'm going to log in. The first use case scenario is a credit card J.D. Edwards order. So I'm going to go into G4211. And let's go into the header. Let's do an add on the sales order. Let's put in a branch plant. Now I have to code this as a credit card order. That could be anything. It could be payment, and it's usually payment terms or payment instrument. In our demo environment, we're basically saying question mark is the payment instrument, credit card payment. So this now at the order header is differentiating this. I'm going to put in, like I said, I'll use different quantity this time. Okay, there we go. And at this particular point, this is, a lot of people say, what is this? Well, this is where you would manage the credit card information. This application is OVI certified, and this is very, very important. Because we're inside of J.D. Edwards, you better make sure any solution you're considering is OVI, is Oracle J.D. Edwards vetted. And with that, Oracle is assigned KRI System 99 codes. So this is a non-intrusive P99 code. In fact, if I was to come up here and do view frame source, you can see this is J.D. Edwards. It's the P99 code. Now, inside of this form, we have what we call our payment pad. Let's do something else. Let's do view frame source. So you can see this is our KRISE server right here. This is the URL. Suman was talking about the picture earlier of, and once again, we're not written in the One World tool set. We're a separate server. Now, when I get into this right here, now this is, say, enter a new payment profile. Let's do a right-click and view frame source here. Notice where I'm at. This is CyberSource. So this is, and Suman, you tell me, is basically saying that CyberSource is an iframe connection to what they call hosted payment pages, yes, where all of the cardholder data is entered. And by the way, CyberSource is a Visa-owned company, so everything that's going on here is on a Visa server. Yes. But this iframe is inside of our iframe. Our web form, you can say that, but yes. Okay. Inside our iframe, which is hosted in JDA. All right, good. And what we have here is I can enter a credit card profile, and as you saw from the previous, what we would do is we would go to CyberSource. That's where the processing, that's where the storage, the tokenization. We receive back a token. So that token is the XXX. A token, and you need that token for subsequent processing like the capture settlement. You need that token for things like credits, partial credits and full credits. We can also do a split payment. So these are some saved profiles. And by the way, we work equally well with ACH. All payment gateways support ACH. And it's important to remember that because credit card fees are expensive, depending on how many fields and your relationship with the bank and the so-called interchange rate that's the plus part of the interchange rate that you pay. You know, for a lot of companies, that 2 and 3%. So I always like to show the ACH. So with this application here, and we owe $297, let's come in here and do a partial payment. So we'll do $110 as ACH, and we'll do the remaining amounts, and we'll do the authorized payments. So it's saying it was an authorization success. So on this payment pad, we have additional information now. You can see we're working kind of as the traffic cop, the middleware between the payment gateway and J.D. Edwards. Here's ACH with the transaction ID. Obviously a credit card, you're additionally dealing with an authorization number. This is now part of that transaction. And at this point it would go on its merry way through the sales order activity rules, you know, order pick, however you have it set up. But I do want to show, and let's come back here and show you exactly what that, so if I come in here to the sales order header, and the order that I just created, 4642, so I do a save on that. And if I was to come in here and look at the row exit here for EASYPay is in fact associated with that transaction. So it's always there. This is the system codes, system code 99 that J.D. Edwards has assigned to us, and we're managing it. We're now part of the transaction. Like I said, you need to be there for managing the capture, for managing partial credits, doing a CO on the J.D. Edwards side. We need to also credit the issuing bank with credits. So it's part of that. Now, what I'm going to do here is I'm actually going to come in here and do a detail revision.
All right, we do have a question in here, if you can just take 1 second. So someone asked, can authorization be done in a batch using stored credit card numbers?
Yes.
Okay.
So here, let me just change that to 540 and 551. So I'm moving the status forward through the ship confirmation, through print pick slip and ship confirmation. And so from that perspective, at this point, a batch process is going to be created. And if I was to go back here to the detail revisions, let's see if it picked up the batch. It did. So I changed the status to from 520, 540 to 540, 551, excuse me, 520, 540 to 540, 551. It's now 551 and 560. So I talked about the ordered cash life cycle of authorization at order crate. We just did the settlement. As a matter of fact, let's now come in here on this order to the row exit. So you notice that the capture has occurred. The $297, there's the transactions IDs. I could log into CyberSource and show it to you there, but I don't think we have enough time within the hour. So basically we have this EASYPay row exit, and we've taken the order from creation with the authorization to the capture. And like I said, the capture, it can tie to hold codes, it can tie to status codes, it can tie to UBEs. If you wanted to manually override it, you could. but usually the capture is an automated process, such as you've got a UPS scale, calculating the freight line, and before you want the truck to leave, you want to do the capture right there and then. Usually you have a successful settlement. The capture 99.9% is going to be a success like it did. There could be a chance the card could have been reported stolen, so there is that slight chance, but that's through the two steps. Now let's go through the invoice portion. And actually do so if I was to come here to G42, and let's go through the end-of-day processing. And so I want to do an update on the sales. So I want to simply, I'm taking the order and going through order to cash. So at this point, if I do data selection and do a submit, and come down here and update, what was the order again?
4642.
4642. So let's do an OK there. A couple of OKs. So with that, if we go into the sales order right now, and that was 4642, and do a find on it, and come to the row exit with orders. Okay, Jenny says, oh, okay, I got to get into sales order detail. 4642. There we go. So we can see that I created the invoice, and you can see that the order is closed right now. There it is, $560, $599. So now let's come here to the order and the online invoice, and I forgot to note. So is that 4906?
Yeah.
Okay, so 4906 is the invoice. So with that, let's go into the G03B11. And if I was to look at that invoice, 4906, right?
4906.
And do a find on that. We can see that the batch AR update occurred, that the open AR is no longer open. And if we were to go into the row exit with the draft receipt process, all of the detail is there. You see the payment ID, receipt number. Where's batch number? There's the batch number right there. So we've taken it through the 3 steps of acknowledgement with order create. And by the way, Katie, somebody did ask if, from the perspective of this being a pure batch process, if there was one credit card associated with that address book. Or we could also do this. We can create one credit card if there are multiple payment profiles as a default, and this is the question that they asked. Then we could simply do a batch process on that credit card right from the order create process, right, yes. Suman?
Yes.
Okay, and we do have another question. So someone wants to know if we can swipe and if we support PIN.
Yes, so basically swipe, PIN, near code frequency, there's a lot of different ways of doing it, but basically we do support devices like MagTech, and to a large degree that's called point-to-point encryption. So with point-to-point encryption, even that type of PCI processing has evolved over the years where these devices are embedded with a security code tied to one specific gateway, like CyberSource or Authorize or PayPal. So the point-to-point, once again, you can't break into, and thus our application is working like we're showing, except from a device perspective. Now, there's something else I did want to show, and let's go into daily processing. So address book revision. So we showed credit card sales order. Now let's do things differently. Let's show it from an EASYPay invoice collection. So what we're doing here is, this is open invoices. So this is a CSR, a call center person, they're on the phone, they're discussing, and once again, what we're showing, it's a SQL statement that's controlled in our administration. You want to show credit orders, suppress credit orders. We in fact are showing credit orders if I scroll through here, but we're bringing up from the J.D. Edwards tables, in this case against address book 4242, and by the way, all of our forms have filtering on top, so if there's a specific invoice number or invoice date, this is all filtering up on top. So what I'm going to do here is show invoice creation. So if I was to come in here, select the 30, actually let's select this one down here, 4904. Let's go to proceed with payments. And then I wanted to do, once again, I could, select a payment. I showed this. I could do the split like I did before, or I can simply come in here and use a save token. And I use the American Express. This time I'll use a Visa. So it's the same thing. It's the authorization. And just like with the credit card, this now has been fully batch AR updated. The cash receipt process has occurred. And so this was invoice 4904. If I was to go into the G3B11. $4904, $4904, and there's that receipt that I just did from EasyPay, invoice collections. So this is what we have from J.D. Edwards. I do want to refer back, though, to this slide. Yeah, I do want to refer back to this. So when we're doing the batch AR updates, by default, and a lot of people don't mind this, we do the capture settlement and we do the batch AR updates. And so it's a batch process at the end of the day after you're running sales updates, and people are fine with that. But the point that I want to make is many times it does take 2 or 3 days before you receive the funds. That's simply the way the credit card network works. So we could put simply a scheduled 2-day delay, but once again, it might not be 2 days. It might be 3 days. It might be 4 days. So the point, in fact, let me scroll up here, is the point that I wanted to show here is that there is a CSV file associated with the deposit. So we can do the batch AR update associated with the CSV file. In fact, we have an administration, and it's a folder that we work from for that batch AR update, and that CSV file email is simply forwarded to the folder. We're constantly looking at it. As soon as we see it in there, we'll do the batch AR update. So we're being real GL-centric. In fact, some of our customers, and Suman, if you wouldn't mind further explaining this, they actually want us to initially, after the capture settlement, close the invoice in the general ledger, and then kind of explain this process.
So what you are looking at is a more exact duplication of the real life scenario. When you take a payment from a customer from a credit card or ACH, a customer has effectively paid you. So they would like to close the invoice of the customer right away, which is what Doug showed. But in reality, you don't have money in your bank account because there is a couple of days of delays. So what they do is that they open another GL account receivable for the funds due from the bank in the AR subledger. So your accounts will now show that you still owe, money is still owed to you, but now it's owed to you from the bank, not from the customer. So if your customer calls you in that 2 days, they will not hear from you that, oh, you still have dues on their account. They will show that they have paid, but your account will still show that you're still owed the money from the bank. And when actually the data come from the bank in terms of CSV, we use that CSV and then we create an auto reconcile job with the CSV that we get, and then we debit the GL account that we just created for the balance with the due that came from the bank. So your account now has the money from the bank and it's completely closed.
Right, and it's totally reconciled down to the exact, pretty much moment that the funds are deposited. And obviously public companies, many of our larger companies mostly, that's very important. For others, simply doing it with a scheduled 2-day work. And the reason I'm bringing this up is this is a little bit more in terms of services for us to implement, that, not much more, but it also talks to the flexibility of how we can personalize it and customize it to a customer's requirements. Now what I'm going to do is I focused on J.D. Edwards. So let's look at a perspective of outside of J.D. Edwards, from a portal perspective.
All right, before we move on, we got another question.
Okay.
Do we have a hook into contract billing like we do into sales orders?
So yeah, with contract billing, a work order, working against the other systems in J.D. Edwards like Service Module. Once again, our platform does allow that. As a matter of fact, I'm going to show an example, a subscription example in our portal here, and with that we are in fact working against service management. So the answer is yes. Okay, so with that I am going to go into an EASYCommerce portal. So I'm going to do 2 types of use case scenarios from outside of J.D. Edwards, a portal. And by the way, Suman, half of our customers, we work with single sign-on, or they have an existing portal. So we're looking at things now from a web application. It could be the URL that we create for you, or it could be something existing, right? Yeah. So I'm logging in as a profile that represents an end customer. So this is customer online bill pay. This is Patty Watson, who is associated, with an address book, and Patty logs in, and once again you have the filtering up on top. And by the way, I didn't show this in J.D. Edwards, and for a lot of people this is real important. But do you see the print button by the invoices? Let me click that on. And I could have done that in J.D. Edwards, and I probably should have, because people are surprised we can many times do this type of functionality from J.D. Edwards. This is code that we have, and Suman can explain it if you want to know exactly what it is, but it's auto PDF create. It's basically, this is a PDF that was created on the fly, and we're simply going out and creating a form and creating it, so we can do it against that one, we can do it against that. This is auto PDF create. Many of our customers, though, that they do in fact have document management, create form, Optio, packages like that. They have existing PDFs. We can do things like hyperlink the invoice form and create association to existing PDFs. But I did want to mention this. Also on top of our forms like this, there's an Excel export here. So at any point in time, if the grid that you're looking at that we're showing, you just want to do a straight download to Excel, it's another mechanism for reporting. So let's get back here. This is Patty Watson, end customer, logging in, wanting this is for companies that want to get rid of paper invoices and mailing and checks and that whole process. So it's Patty coming in here and saying, let me take this order, let me take this order. We have a processing option. You can enforce full payments or we can allow partial payments. That's what we're doing here. Proceed to payments. And everybody on this webinar should be getting familiar with what we call the payment pad. The payment pad that we're showing from the sales order inside the P4210, or it could have been Power Forms, from the address book record showing invoices, here from a customer online bill pay. It's all the same payment pad, and it works in the same way. So this might be, once again, Patty coming in here and saying, I just want to use one of my existing profiles. And I've gone into J.D. Edwards to show how we're processing it. And this is the information we received back, in this case from CyberSource. Let's do something else. Let's do from Patty account summary. So this might be helpful to have a customer, and we can work against, just like the person that asked contract services before, we can work against any JDE field, any JDE program, any Z file. The platform has everything mapped to JD Edwards. So this is a use case scenario of maybe show running balance, AR information, running balance, account available, or more information like this. Unapplied cash. Maybe you want to allow functionality from the end customer to say, I want to pay $400, and this is example receipt 1, and I misspelled receipt, but that's okay. And once again, same thing. It's the payment pad. I'll come here to split payments, and maybe with this $400, they want to put $200 here, and they want to put $200 here. Remaining balance is 0, so I'm doing that. So think of the portal approaches. Our application is a layer on top of JD Edwards, seamlessly working through it. Now let's go into payments. So these are the payments. This is the open amount of $9,985. I did $5,000 payment on the one invoice, 4903. On 4902, I paid the whole thing, $421. You see the RU type here. I just did an unapplied cash with payment ID and batch number. We can provide other areas of information in JD Edwards, like statements. Once again, if you wanted, and this is auto PDF create, just create a form for somebody to consume, or once again, create the the download here. So we make it very, very easy to work with. We've even, Suman talked about our API, our tool set approach. We've even done, and this is also tied to the last question about working against contract. This is a use case scenario of working against services, not necessarily discrete items, but the process would be create a subscription, select a billing option, and then do a payment. Most of our customers, it's invoice payments here, like what we're showing on the portal. This is an EASYPay. It could be your existing portal. If I was to go to our EASYCommerce solution, which is here, so this is our full EASYCommerce solution.
See the default on the top?
Yeah, well, it says EasyCommerce right now.
No, on the top just say default instead of default EasyPay.
Oh, I see what you're saying. So let's just log in as a Paul Johnson profile, which is an end customer. So this is our e-commerce solution. It's full catalog with order, invoice, inquiry. So it's used by about 35 JDE companies. It's a very, very hot solution out there for companies looking for e-commerce. But once again, within the context of creating an order, I could show that, and there would be the payment pad, or like I just showed with EasyPay, same thing here. And from an API perspective, if you've got Magento and you want this, one of our customers is Christie's, the auction bidding house, so we did a project for them, and they came back and they said, we have our own application. It's My Christie's, it's an auctioning bidding solution. So they wanted to take an API approach. Suman, did you kind of want to describe that a little bit more, the API approach? Or?
Yeah, definitely. So in a sense, if you just take this option and go to the next page, just click on invoice here. So they already have a place where customer can look, that they call that mychristies.com, and they can look at the invoices. What they wanted us to do is to plug in this payment pad that you are looking at, which was tied to their payment platform Adyen. That's their gateway, payment gateway, and the processor. So we utilize our APIs, and we were able to give them the REST API URLs and REST API that they can call from mychristies.com, and when their customer logs in, they see it as part of mychristies.com. They don't even realize that they are interacting with another application inside MyChristies, as you are seeing here. So the interface pretty much remained the same, but we took over the payment side as well as the processing, the transaction processing side on the JD Edwards. So we are responsible for making sure that invoice gets paid in JDE, as Doug was showing, properly with the batch number and everything, the batch year update. And then we are also responsible to make sure that the invoice, the amount gets paid from the Adyen payment gateway, while customer still thinks that they are in online mychristies.com. So that's another approach you can take if you are looking to do, if you already have an e-commerce site or any third-party application and you're trying to integrate that with.
And it's not just EasyPay, it's the full EasyCommerce. In other words, everything that we're doing in terms of a JD Edwards touch point, whether it's creating the sales order, dealing with commerce, or looking up invoices and paying an invoice as it deals with the payment, everything is API based from our perspective, and it's not just Christie's. We have many, many other companies that say, hey, we've got existing, quoting applications, and we simply want the JD Edwards integration. And so it's usually more and more REST APIs. Years ago, we were doing things with SOAP web services, but REST APIs have been the predominant mechanism for the last couple of years, almost exclusively, right, Suman?
Yes.
Yeah.
They're easy to use, easy to consume, easy to produce, with Easy Process, our platform.
So just a reminder, we've got a little under 10 minutes now, so get all those final questions in so that we can answer them.
And once again, I will show, from an e-commerce perspective, I'll come in here and say drill down. This is our e-commerce platform, maybe show it as a thumbnail representation. So if I was to come into our shopping cart, it could be another shopping cart too. It could be, like I said, Magento or something like that. And if I wanted to simply proceed to the checkout, so I'm in the checkout. This is Paul Johnson, associated with 4242. If you want to do a ship to override, maybe you want, and that's exactly how it's going to be processed as an override. So PO number, webinar example, PO 123, request date, do that, We integrate against your contracts, so out of the box we do the web services to your FedEx, UPS. We even have LTL type integration. There's the item. If I wanted to do credit card now, and I specifically wanted to bring this up because from an e-commerce perspective, we always create the order first, even before taking the credit card payment information. So this 4643, if I was to come back here to J.D. Edwards, 4643, and do a find, you can see that order is on hold. So it's in J.D. Edwards, and there is the ship to doc. So, you know, whether it's ship delivery instructions or line item comments or header level comments. But the thing I wanted to show you is from an e-commerce perspective, we always put the order on hold, come back into where we were, say do a split payment, or I'll just pay the whole thing with the Visa card. So the authorization was success. So once again, that payment card, that payment pad that you're seeing here that I described in detail in the first use case scenario, this payment pad is universal across everything. If I was to go into J.D. Edwards right now, do an update, you can see the hold code is released, and it'll continue on. So there's a lot of use case scenarios dealing with payments, and the APIs really open it up. Katie, any other questions?
No, not at the moment, but of course we'll be following up with the recording probably sometime on Monday, and then, you know, if you guys think of anything over the weekend, you know, we're always here, so you can always reach out and ask us anything at a later time.
Everyone, thank you very much for spending your hour with us, and we'll do an email with the recording, with the slide deck, and if you'd like us to follow up to discuss your potential fit with any of your project requirements, please reach out. Joe and I would be happy to follow up. Thank you very much.